Hi, I'm Bob, Global Identity Leader with IBM. And today's topic is to look at how AWS and IBM work together to address the number one issue in cybersecurity today. The number one issue in cybersecurity is that 80% of all attacks right now are focused on identities, both human and non-human identities and their access to systems. The problem comes from the fact that the way people manage identities today is all over the place. And so let me show you what I mean by that. So when we go and have a conversation about identities with a client, we usually end up talking about two different kinds of identities. Our workforce users, like our employees and partners, and then we have our consumers, or in public sector, the citizens that are logging in to get access to public services and things like that. On top of that, we also have non-human identities, such as the applications that are modernized DevSecOps applications that are connecting to each other. The issue that exists out there today is you'd assume that people would use a consistent way to manage those identities, but the truth is, when I go and ask a client, what is your strategy for identity management, they typically will answer me with the name of a tool. And I'll say, that's a tool. That's actually not a strategy. And they'll say, well, but we've got this tool and we want everybody to use it. And then I ask the obvious question, right? Which is, do you think everyone will use the tool? And then people look at the floor. And the reason is most organizations have a separate identity and access management system for managing their consumers from their workforce. And in their workforce, oftentimes they'll have a system that they wrote 20, 25 years ago that's still supporting a bunch of legacy applications that also sometimes you manage the identities in those separately. And then, of course, as soon as you modernize to the cloud, such as with AWS, you're going to be managing identities there as well. So if you think about it, the problem is that these red dots represent all the different places, and this is a very simplified view of it, where we have different groups of people that are saying, here is a security policy with the types of users we have and what access they should have, but we're managing it with different groups of people in lots of different places. So what has happened in the industry is there's been a realization that this very spread out way of managing identities is what's leading to identities being such a visible attack vector today. Now, the fact that it's ugly is, okay, big deal. What's the real problem? The real problem is that the things people are trying to do to become more secure with their online presence is impossible with the current rate and pace. For example, frictionless access. Today, when you're relying on business growth through modernized applications, what you want to do is reduce the friction. Meaning, every time you have to enter your password, or look it up probably, right, and enter your password, that's a form of friction. When you get a 6-digit code sent to your device and you have to plug it in, that's a form of friction. There are the ability to do frictionless authentication, passwordless, literally eliminating passwords, that are more secure than the current state. And yet, how do you implement frictionless authentication across all of these different places identities are being managed? You cannot. It's impossible. Secondly, as I said, 80% of all the attacks are on identity, so threat management is a huge topic. It's clear that the way that we're doing that today, typically through a SIM tool in the Security Operations Center with the User Behavior Analytics module, is not working that well. So there's been two new AI-based radical developments in our industry. One is ITDR, Identity Threat Detection Response. The other is Identity Security Posture Management, or ISPM. That is the ability to see policy bypasses, such as a multi-factor authentication policy bypass as it's happening. That's the ITDR side of things. And then the ISPM side of things is, where do you see sloppy identity posture rolled out, where hackers can easily take advantage of that, such as having shadow users and shadow assets and shadow directories and shadow access. All of that is brand new AI-based technologies that are out there that allow us to address this issue of 80% of the attacks being on identities. Third, this one is amazing to think about. An auditor will show up in an organization and say, with all your different systems that you have here, show me a consolidated view of who has access to my systems and what access do they have. Nobody can do it today because it's literally being managed in all these different places. So the need to be able to show a consolidated view has become a huge issue. And the final one, this is kind of fun, is cyber insurance. Cyber insurance providers clearly want to make sure that the organizations that they're providing their policies to have at least baseline security policies in place. What cyber insurance providers have figured out is that almost everybody has a hole on one of the most important pieces, and that is privileged access management, or PAM as people call it. These are the most privileged users that can do things in your systems and then go into the audit logs and remove the entries they ever did anything. It's not we don't trust our employees, is that because identity is the number one attack vector, when you have a compromised valid credential that is a privileged user, it becomes a huge issue. So cyber insurance providers universally now are asking organizations, do you know where all your privileged users are? And do you have proper PAM controls against them? And the truth is, almost nobody does. Everybody's got PAM, but it's usually only rolled out to a fraction of the privileged users. And so having privileged access management across the board has become a huge topic. These are just 4 of dozens of things that people would like to do to become more secure, but because of that mess of how identities are being managed today, it's been impossible. So what IBM and AWS collaborate on is, how do we form an identity fabric? How do I take all these different places where I'm managing identities and get it to work together into a nice fabric that actually collaborates well? What we found is that there's 7 components of being able to do this. The first is the ability to do identity orchestration. The ability to do something like a user logging into a legacy application that doesn't even support multi-factor authentication, and through identity orchestration, not only allowing it to support MFA, but also passwordless, eliminate passwords. That's very critical, and IBM and AWS do that across our platforms. Second is risk-based authentication. That's an AI-based behavioral analytics capability that when someone logs into a compromised valid credential, you can actually discover it as it's happening, because the behavior of the user logging in, such as typing rate on their keyboard and the error rate in their typing, doesn't match the first 243 times that the actual real user logged in. You can detect stuff like that. The reason that's so critical is that our cost of data breach study last year discovered that for an identity-based attack, the average number of days it takes to identify and contain the attack is literally 292 days. When you use AI-based behavioral analytics, the first time the hacker logs into the compromised account, you can tell it's not the right person, and you can chop it off at the beginning. That's the second piece, is risk-based authentication. Third is legacy applications. A lot of these legacy applications, you don't even have the people around anymore that wrote them. And so how can you possibly add multi-factor authentication, frictionless authentication, etc. to them? Well, there are ways now to do low-code, no-code integration, and we in AWS provide that together. Fourth is governance. You need to be able to set up, manage, and eliminate accounts in a consistent way. People today generally call that joiner, mover, leaver, and doing that consistently across all the platforms is critical. Fifth is directory synchronization, where you get a consolidated view to address that single view problem I mentioned. ITDR and ISPM, a lot of people are calling those things identity observability, is kind of the short term that's being used for that. And that's, once again, being able to find attacks on the identities in real time, such as policy bypasses, as well as poor security posture, identity posture, that can be taken advantage of. That's the ISPM piece. Those two together are called identity observability. And then finally is privileged access management, of course. You need to be able to do that. So IBM and AWS collaborate to be able to provide this into an AI-fused identity fabric. So the core use cases of what we focus on here is that, first of all, the ability to do eliminating passwords, passwordless, frictionless, whatever term you want to use. We provide that through our IBM Verify platform today. For clients that don't have the IBM Verify platform, that are using another tool such as Okta Ping, whatever, we have the Verify application gateway that provides that ability to do low-code, no-code access into those legacy applications from non-IBM identity providers. Secondly, using AI to find the policy bypasses, to find the poor posture, and to find the behavioral analytics that can catch something live, like I was just sharing. That is done through our IBM Verify platform. Once again, for clients that have Okta Ping or some other identity provider, our Verify Trust product provides that same functionality. Next is actually delivering the overall governance of truly forming this identity fabric across AWS and IBM. That is provided by our Verify platform. Fourth, that whole ITDR, ISPM identity observability piece I shared is a very special case. It is an AI engine that pulls in all the network flows, all the cloud flows, and all the identity activity. So it sees what's actually happening, not what do you think's happening, but what's really happening. And it finds those policy bypasses. It finds the misconfigurations. It finds the shadow directories and access and application access, etc. And that's done through our Verify Identity Protection solution. And then finally, for the privileged access management, we have our verified privileged identity that allows you to easily expand the PAM controls to all of the privileged accounts that are out there. And then finally, we're really excited at IBM because we just completed our acquisition of HashiCorp. And HashiCorp is not only the industry leader in doing infrastructure lifecycle management through Terraform and some of the other tools there, but also HashiCorp is the industry leader in security lifecycle management for modernized applications, especially through HashiCorp Vault and Boundary. The ability to do secrets management in a much more secure way across the entire application stack. And so the combination of IBM Verify for identity management and HashiCorp Vault and Boundary for applying secrets management and remote access against all this allows us uniquely with AWS for the first time to pull the enterprise IT teams that are often focused on human identities and the modern DevOps and DevSecOps team on the platform engineering teams that are doing a lot of modernized apps with non-human identities. We're now able to pull all that into the fabric. So we can provide an identity fabric that handles human identities, non-human identities, secrets management, full identity access management, and a single stack. Okay? So I hope you've seen here, this is very exciting stuff. Most of the attacks are taking place in this vector. And the fact that AWS and IBM work together, we host a lot of our stuff on AWS, and that we can truly address the #1 attack vector in cyber today. Thanks for your time.